minutes. Sorry, guys.
Okay, it appears that we're live now, so welcome to any who are watching the regular meeting of council for Tuesday, April the 6th. I'll call the meeting to order, and looking to the agenda, I understand that the online agenda has two items under section L, L1 and L2. There is no L2, so we'll only be considering item L1, the EPCOR contract briefing in camera. Are there any other changes to the agenda? Seeing none.
Yep.
Great, then I'll move the agenda be approved as noted. Those in favor? Opposed? Motion's carried unanimously. Moving on to the approval of minutes. So we're looking to the minutes of the February 23rd special meeting of council. Are there any errors or omissions? Seeing none, I move the minutes be adopted as presented. Those in favor? Opposed? Motion's carried unanimously. And looking to the minutes of the March 2nd regular meeting of council, are there errors or omissions? Seeing none, I'll move the minutes be adopted as presented. Those in favor? Opposed? Motion's carried unanimously. And we will move on to item F1. Land Use Bylaw Amendment 2020-19, Three Sisters DC District Site 5. And is Ms. Wojtenko speaking of this, or?
Yeah, good morning. I have a quick presentation to give. Good morning, councillors. Great. Is my screen being shared right now?
Yeah.
Perfect. So I'm just going to be very quick. This is a similar presentation that I gave last month when this bylaw came forward for second reading. So what you're seeing right now on your screen is the portion of, it's mostly Site 5, a little bit of Site 4 in the Three Sisters Stewart Creek area. You can see it's adjacent to the Trans-Canada Highway, Three Sisters Boulevard, and Three Sisters Parkway. And the purpose of this bylaw is to amend our current land use bylaw 2018-22. And it's mostly mapping changes that is being proposed. And it's going from DC 198 districts, Site 2 and B and 5, to a number of districts are being proposed. TSGD, R3 SC1, PD district, which is public use, and environmental district. So this is the current zoning in the land use bylaw right now. The proposed zoning, what's being brought forward in this bylaw, you can see quite a few mapping changes. And the other purpose of this bylaw, and this is what you saw at first reading, was to add a number of uses to the list of discretionary uses, just to the TSGD district. And this includes brewery, distillery, the drive-in, drive-through food services, and light manufacturing. The bylaw also proposes to delete Site 5 from the DC 198 district, as all of the lands would no longer have this zoning, and so it can be removed from the land use bylaw. This is the concept plan that has been shared with the town that is required to come in with the first application for subdivision. So we have received both a pre-application for subdivision, and we now have a completed subdivision application, which is now being circulated as required in the subdivision and development regulation. And that is the end of my presentation.
Thanks very much. In regards to the subdivision, you indicate that the subdivision application is complete now and being reviewed by town admin.
Yes, the subdivision application has been deemed complete under the Municipal Government Act. And as such, we are then required to circulate the application to all the required agencies, adjacent municipalities, and adjacent landowners. That circulation went out last week, and it's a 3-week period before we get comments back.
Right. So just to understand process, how's subdivision linked to the bylaw?
To this land use bylaw amendment?
Right.
Well, the subdivision designs the property boundaries, the roads, where parks would be located, municipal reserves, environmental reserves, any environmentally significant features on the landscape would be identified at subdivision, grading of the lots. And so in the end, the land use bylaw defines those districts, so what land uses can be used there. Typically, with a lot of applications such as these, we would require the land use bylaw amendment and the subdivision go concurrent. As you start working through subdivision design, you often realize that the boundaries might change, the types of municipal reserves. We have not reviewed the geotechnical report yet for the environmental reserve designation. So we do recommend that these would run concurrent rather than bringing the land use bylaw back for further amendment should that be required. And this is what my alternative recommendation last time at second reading was that council could postpone this until more is known at the subdivision stage. They are quite closely linked.
Right. So clearly subdivision couldn't be approved unless the land use bylaw had been approved.
No, subdivision can be approved and is actually often approved in advance of a land use bylaw amendment. The reason being is you can actually condition a subdivision decision, and you can say that you're approving the subdivision subject to the land use bylaw being amended. There are no conditions when you approve a land use bylaw amendment. It then sets that land use. There are no conditions. There are the regulations in the land use bylaw, but you can't say that it's subject to the approval of a subdivision application.
Great. So I understand the applicant had asked for two what I would presume are minor amendments to the bylaw post first reading, essentially removing one section and removing some words to another section. I believe planning has been in conversation with Quantum on this. Ms. Miller or Ms. Wojtenko?
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The planning department has had some conversations about potential amendments to this district. The ones that the applicant has proposed that potentially council could review and make amendments to as part of today's meeting, as you noted, are fairly minor in nature. However, as Ms. Wojtenko has already noted, we are in the midst of the subdivision process, and therefore additional amendments may be necessary in order to accommodate that development. Therefore, council can still proceed with the amendment, well, the bylaw as proposed at first reading. Council could make the amendments as requested by the applicant, keeping in mind that there may be additional amendments that could come forward in the future. So the decision for council is really whether you want to see a comprehensive list of amendments for this site, or whether you're comfortable moving forward with some amendments now and seeing other amendments in the future.
Right. And if there are other amendments required, then it would require opening up the bylaw for 3 readings and public hearing.
That is correct.
Mm-hmm. You note that the amendments that have been requested are minor in nature. Can you speak to that a bit?
So they're minor in nature as they are, as Ms. Wojtenko mentioned, they're related to development standards. So they're not directly impacting the uses permissible or prohibited on the land. So if there are conversations being had by the applicant about particular land uses, these particular amendments don't directly impact those conversations, but would impact future stages of the development process, likely at the subdivision or development permit stage. Okay,
thanks. And if there are additional amendments that are required because of the subdivision, when is that likely to be ready to come to council?
We wouldn't be able to determine a timeline at this particular juncture just because the subdivision process is ongoing. So once that process had concluded, the applicant could bring forward amendments at their earliest convenience.
And is there any possibility that there won't be any additional amendments required after the subdivision process has run its course?
Potentially, it would be hard to say. As I noted, we're in the midst of the process. So if through that review process, it was identified that there were elements that didn't quite align with the land use bylaw as approved by council potentially today, the applicant could make changes to their application in order to better align with what council has potentially approved today. If they chose not to, then yes, future amendments would likely be necessary.
Okay, I'm cognizant of the fact that if the requested amendments are put forward today and for any reason fail, those amendments can't come back to council for a 6-month period. So that would create a 6-month delay in final approval of an amended land use bylaw.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I would maybe defer to the city clerk procedurally, but I would think the answer is yes. That would be that the amendments were actually put on the table. So if council doesn't consider them, I don't know that they fall within that 6-month period.
That's right. It's only if there's a motion that fails, then that can't come back to council for 6 months. So I'm wrestling with not proposing the amendments and allowing the land use bylaw perhaps to be approved as today as it had been at first reading without any changes. Okay. Is there any other questions this time for Ms. Wojtenko or Ms. Miller? Seeing none, thanks for your presentation. Now, this motion was on the table and postponed, am I right, Ms. Hyde?
Correct. It was on the table already.
Right, so don't need to put the motion to give second reading back on the table. I'm just taking it, putting it back on the table.
Yes, that's fine.
Right. Motion then to give, for council to give second reading the land use bylaw amendment 2020-19, Three Sisters DC District Site 5 is on the table. And I will put forward 2 small amendments. And Ms. Hyde, you have a screen to share.
Yes, I do. Stand by.
Standing by. And while that's loading up, the first amendment there is to, I move the council amend land use bylaw amendment 2020-19 by removing all of section 4.9.52B. Is there discussion on this motion? If there's no discussion on the proposed amendment, call the question. Those in favor? Those opposed? Motion's carried unanimously. And scrolling down, I'll move that the council amend land use bylaw amendment 2020-19 by removing the following words from section 4.9.7.2. And you'll see the words that are struck. The first sentence would be struck. The last sentence would be struck, leaving only the purchase and installation of recycling bins shall be at the developer's expense and provided to the satisfaction of the town. Discussion on that motion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. Those in favor? And those opposed? Motion's carried unanimously. Are there any other amendments to be proposed? Seeing none, then back to giving second reading to the Land Use Bylaw Amendment 2020-19 as amended. Discussion on that motion. Councillor McCallum.
Thank you, Mayor Barman, and thank you for administration for tabling this for us, postponing this rather. As you know, I was the one that put forward the motion to postpone, so I thought it would be best for me to speak to second reading. Since first reading, council and the mayor are now on the same page as to what sort of plans the developer has on those lands. I understand that the land use change needs to occur so that they can move forward with their agreements with potential commercial retailers. We've also discovered that there's really no way to receive any insurances short of stopping the whole thing. And I don't really think that is a great way to move forward. So I appreciate the developer providing some information to council in camera or privately, and I am happy to support second reading at this time.
Information in camera, what was that?
Sorry, I guess maybe in camera is not the right word to use. We received a letter from the applicant that was marked confidential to council administration, or sorry, to council rather, explaining to us what was planned and why they needed the land use to move forward at this time. And it was shared with us by their commercial leasing representative.
Mm-hmm. But it wasn't in camera.
No, sorry, Your Worship, you're absolutely correct. It was just privately shared. I apologize for that, and I rescind that statement.
Okay, so again, speaking to second reading of the bylaw as amended, as I indicated at first reading, I'm supportive of moving forward with this bylaw. I think the proposed development in the Gateway District is really good development for Canmore. We need what's being proposed there, and particularly in the commercial area. I know that there's a number of residents in the Three Sisters area, particularly, that are looking forward to having large format grocery chain up there, and some of the other commercial activities. I'm also quite keen on the possibility of University of Saskatchewan locating their research lab there, their Canmore campus. So once again, I'm quite in support of this bylaw. Councillor Sanford.
Thank you, Mayor Barman. I too will support this bylaw. Most of the letters and the presentations that we had regarding this land use change were positive, and I think a lot of the people in the neighborhood will very much welcome the opportunity to have some commercial services nearby. One of the things that I think people benefit from is the fact that they don't have to travel as far for those services. And some of the presentations also noted that they could get to these services much easier by walking and cycling. So I think that really enhances our own transportation plans for Canmore and having these services closer to where people are residing. I know that the applicant has indicated a high degree of commitment to servicing this whole area, but then focusing on building out the commercial area first. So I'm really looking forward to the fact that they're going into it with some good plans, and also some people who have committed to leasing the buildings. And a number of Canmore businesses also noted that this would give people an opportunity to expand into new business areas that they might need some more space in. So I think the applicant is looking at moving this forward in the commercial sense, but we understand that they have to develop the whole property to get the whole property serviced on stream. So I will happy to support this. Thanks.
Councillor Seeley.
I'll also speak in support of this bylaw. I think it's an important opportunity for Canmore. The commercial development is and the light manufacturing opportunities are good. I look forward to possibility of a university campus and the other amenities that this project offers. So I will support it.
Councillor Mera.
Thank you, Mayor Berman. I too will support this. I, like Councillor Seeley, do like the fact of the light manufacturing. I think some of our commercial people that are looking to grow need some space and have sort of looked into maybe possibly going further east of us. So this might keep them in town. The whole aspect of the land use, the bylaw for this or the zoning, I think is a positive for Canmore. So I will support this.
Further discussion on the motion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. Those in favor? Opposed? Motion's carried unanimously. And then I will move that council give third reading land use bylaw amendment 2020-19, Three Sisters DC District Site 5. Discussion on that motion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. Those in favor? Opposed? Motion's carried unanimously. With that, we will move on to item G1, the Supplementary Assessment Bylaw 2021-08. Ms. Richardson.
Good morning, Mayor and Council. I'm just going to pull up my presentation here and make sure I grab you the right one. Perfect. So the first item I'm here to talk about today is the Supplementary Assessment Bylaw 2021-08. Our recommendation is that Council give first, second, and third reading to the Supplementary Assessment Bylaw 2021-08. So as a reminder of what the Supplementary Assessment Bylaw is, so it's for the supplementary assessment, which addresses an increase in the value of a property that happens during the current tax year. And this happens when new construction is either completed or occupied, or a major renovation or addition is completed on an existing home or building, again, during the current tax year. In order to prepare supplementary assessments, Council must pass the Supplementary Assessment Bylaw authorizing that preparation prior to May 1st. And in conclusion, our recommendation is that Council give first, second, and third reading to Supplementary Assessment Bylaw 2021-08, and I'm happy to address any questions at this time.
Thank you, Ms. Richardson. Are there any questions from members of council for Ms. Richardson at this time? I see none. Thanks for being here to take questions. That I will move that council give first reading to Supplementary Assessment Bylaw 2021-08. Discussion on that motion. I'll speak in support. This is every year council is asked to approve a supplementary assessment bylaw, and the reasons are clearly outlined by administration, and this is an ongoing part of assessment process throughout all municipalities in the province. So happy to vote to approve this bylaw. There's no other discussion on the motion. Call the question. Those in favor? Opposed? Motion's carried unanimously. I'll then move the council give second reading to Supplementary Assessment Bylaw 2021-08. Is there discussion on that motion? See none, I'll call the question. Those in favor? Opposed? Motion's carried unanimously. I'll move the council go to third reading of the Supplementary Assessment Bylaw. Those in favor? Opposed? Motion's carried unanimously. And I'll then move the council give third reading of the Supplementary Assessment Bylaw 2021-08. As there discussion on that motion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. Those in favor and opposed? Motion's carried unanimously. And we will now move on to item G2, the Downtown Business Improvement Area Tax Rate Bylaw 2021-09. Again, Ms. Richardson.
Okay, so next presentation. Perfect. So yes, the Downtown Business Improvement Area, the BIA tax rate bylaw 2021-09. For this one, there are two related recommendations. So first is that council approve the Downtown Business Improvement Area budget for 2021 as presented, and then that council give first, second, and third reading to bylaw 2021-09, the Downtown Business Improvement Area BIA tax rate bylaw. So as a reminder, this is how that process works. So annually, the board of the BIA establishes their budget, which is submitted to council for approval. A rate structure is then established to collect the required revenues in accordance with that budget. And then finally, the levy is collected by the town on behalf of the BIA. In accordance with Alberta's Business Improvement Area Regulation 93/2016, council is required to approve the annual budget prior to passing the bylaw, and the BIA tax rate bylaw, similar to the last agenda item, but also must be passed prior to May 1st. So council may recall, that last year, in light of the impact of COVID-19 to businesses in the downtown Canmore BIA, the board kept the levy for 2020 at the level of the 2019 levy for a total of $104,600. For 2021, the board has similarly also decided not to do an increase to continue to give those impacted businesses a break due to the continuing impacts. So the budget is included as page 28 of the agenda package. It's really hard to fit on the screen, but it's included there in the package, and the according rate structure is included there. And again, that is consistent with the rate structure from 2019 and 2020. So finally, in conclusion, we recommend that council first approve the Downtown Business Improvement Area BIA 2021 budget as presented. And secondly, that council give first, second, and third reading to bylaw 2021-09, the Downtown Business Improvement Area BIA tax rate bylaw. I'm happy to address any questions at this time, and I believe Ms. Vandervoort has also joined us to be able to address any questions pertaining to the BIA and its budget.
Excellent. That's good to hear. Thanks very much. As I was listening to you, I had a question pop into my head that I didn't think you would be able to answer. So it's great that Ms. Vandervoort is here, and I welcome her to go live. I have a question just out of curiosity about the downtown Canmore BIA budget. I don't see Ms. Vandervoort. Is she in fact here?
I know her plan was to join us this morning. Not sure if she is running late.
Well, perhaps Councillor Mayer would have the answer as the councillor, and it's not germane to the decision. Just looking at the budget comparison from 2020 to 2021, the BIA spent a little over $30,000 last year out of their reserves. I know towards endeavors to keep the downtown healthy through COVID. I'm just curious, Councillor Mayer, if you know whether or not that left the BIA with reserves in place, or did that effectively clear their reserves?
It pretty much negated. We pretty much have we kept it not at a zero balance, but we do have a little bit of a balance in there. It's a few $1,000s, like I think $3,000.
And each year, I assume the BIA adds to their reserve. Is it a formal process? It's not in the budget, but how is their reserve replenished?
I believe the last time we put money in, it was just what we didn't spend. It was anything that was left.
Okay, super. So hopefully the BIA will be able to rebuild the reserves going forward. Are there any questions, members of council, for Ms. Richardson? Seeing none, thanks for the presentation. And at this time, I will move that council approve the downtown business improvement area 2021 budget as presented. Discussion on that motion. Seeing none, I'll call the question. Those in favor? Opposed? Motion's carried unanimously. And I'll then move that council give first reading to the bylaw 2021-09, the downtown business improvement area tax rate bylaw. Discussion on that motion. Seeing none, I'll call the question. Those in favor and opposed, motion's carried unanimously. I'll move the council give second reading to bylaw 2021-09, the downtown business improvement area BIA tax rate bylaw. Discussion on that motion. Seeing none, I'll call the question. Those in favor, opposed, motion's carried unanimously. I'll move the council go to the third reading of bylaw 2021-09. Those in favor, opposed, motion's carried unanimously. And I will then move the council give third reading to bylaw 2021-09, downtown business improvement area BIA tax rate bylaw. And I guess I should have spoken, or one of us could have spoken to this at first reading, but I should note that it's important that council support the BIA in this way. The BIA does a great deal of work to keep our downtown business community healthy and thriving. And I appreciate the work that particularly the volunteer members of the BIA board are doing, and certainly Ms. Vandervert's work as well. So happy to play this minor role in the work that the BIA is doing. Is there other discussion on third reading? Seeing none, I'll call the question. Those in favor? Opposed? Motion's carried unanimously. Moving on to item G3, the business registry bylaw updates. Ms. McLeod.
Good morning, council.
Good morning.
Just going to go share my screen here and move you to a place that I can see you on the screen. So we're here today for business registry amendments, business registry bylaw amendments. And I just wanted to flag a slight change to the motion as Mayor Borman had discovered a slight error. So the motions before you today is that council amend bylaw section 3BB to read busking must be in the possession of a business registry license and must comply with all conditions set out in the town's busking permit, and by deleting section 3 and M as outlined in your agenda package. And then following that, council gives second and third reading to business registry bylaw amendment 2021-01. And just as a process, council had first reading of the bylaw in February of 2021, and a public hearing was scheduled for March 2nd, at which time only 2 letters of support were received from the BIA and BODA at that time. And I won't go through this slide as you have seen it before, and just outlining some of the amendments that this change has brought forward to council. And some of the biggest, why the bylaw is coming to council for amendments is because changes to Schedule A in particular, which is a slight amendment of the inclusion of busking as a permit and the amendments of the out-of-town temporary business license fees and their schedules. What is maybe more important to know for council is that we had proposed to bring a busking policy to council. At that time, one of the changes that we thought we would be doing is making that a policy or a bylaw, but upon review of the existing bylaws, both provincial and municipal, we realized that most of the things that we were looking to address in the permitting process were already addressed in existing bylaws, and as such didn't require an additional policy. Rather, what the municipal clerk's office has proposed to us is that we make these conditions, conditions of the permit. So as outlined in pages 53 and 56 of council package is the permitting conditions that would apply to busking. This includes elements like the time frame at which they can do busking, which is between 11 a.m. and 6 p.m. between May 1st and October 31st, maximum of 2 hours per location, no amplification, and the ability for the town to suspend or revoke a license should they contravene the conditions of the permit. This also includes guidelines around locations. So we have 4 locations currently identified, which is Elevation Place Plaza, Friendship Park, the Civic Center Plaza, and Riverside Park. It's a first come, first serve. So if there is a busker there, the other busker is asked to move on to a different location. They can be there for a maximum of 2 hours, and then they have to leave that location for the day. There is an option for additional locations to be included upon request of property owners in the process as well. So these are locations that have been identified by town staff and the BIA as possible locations. The wording changes in the bylaw as outlined in the council recommendation. So buskers must be in the possession of a business registry license and must comply with all conditions set out in the town's busking permit. So this is a change to the bylaw as it was presented in first reading, and then deletion of the section outlining contravention or penalty, because a number of these things are already in other bylaws. This would contradict those. So we're removing it from this bylaw so that under the traffic and safety and under the noise bylaw, those can be addressed there. One thing that I will flag with council that we are currently under still gathering restrictions from the province. So it is administration's recommendation to not issue busking permits for as long as we are, as COVID-19 poses a threat to the public health and the physical distance requirements prohibit people from large gatherings. So although we are asking council to approve this now, administration is recommending not actually issuing any licenses until we can gather in larger group settings than we currently can. That's it for my presentation at this time.
Thanks very much. I'm curious, what's the life of a permit? I mean, once a person has a busking permit, is that good for life? Is it good
So
for?
the busking permit is seasonal. So as outlined, it's May 1st to October. I have to find where I have that. I think it's October 15th, if I'm not mistaken. So it is, for busking, it is seasonal. For a normal business license, for it's annual. So that's from January 1st to December 31st.
Where does it say that? I couldn't find that.
So the normal business license is an annual permit.
I see.
The busking permit would be May 1st to October 31st, as outlined as permit conditions.
And only for the current year then.
Correct.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Comfort.
I noticed that in the notes accompanying the bylaw, it was made note of the fact that the volume of noise, or I hesitate to use the term noise, but is more for things like bagpipes, horns, and drums. I think that could not just our regular noise nuisance bylaw be used rather than singling out particular instruments? Because I'm thinking about, you know, harmonicas can be annoying, or or there's lots of things that could annoy. So yeah. Could we just not make it a kind of a nuisance thing that based on a nuisance complaint that people complain saying, this is giving me a headache or whatever, Or just take it out altogether, because it seems unfair to single out certain instruments. And I think there's a lot of Scots in town who would give you an argument about the bagpipes. So just trying to save you some trouble.
I completely appreciate that. I recognize that upon reviewing busking permitting processes in multiple communities, this tends to be the line that's included in there just because it's a different type of noise and tends to be just a louder instruments. I will leave it up to council whether they want to remove that or not.
It would require an amendment, Councillor Comfort.
I'd be happy to make that amendment and just, take it out. It just seems problematic, that's all.
Well, you've got about 12 seconds to think about that.
Okay, I know you don't like us making amendments on the fly. So I'd have to, actually I don't have that. I have it electronically, so I have to say goodbye to you guys.
I might suggest that we give it a year and see how it plays out, and then council could always amend the bylaw at future time.
Sure, I'll leave that up to the next council then.
I'll just note that these are permitting conditions and not the bylaw itself.
Right.
Gotcha.
Councillor Seeley.
Thank you, Mayor Borman. Ms. McClett, under the locations, it doesn't identify Main Street. Is that assumed that it would happen on Main Street, or is it not permitted on Main Street?
Currently, under the permit conditions, Main Street has not been identified. Because it's generally in front of private property, we feel that it's a better process to have businesses apply to have that within their area and consult with their neighboring businesses to say, we want to be a location where this could take place.
Okay, so it could happen through the application process.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions this time from Ms. McClett? Councillor Sanford.
Thank you, Mayor Borman. I'm just wondering how much time would someone be spending with the issuing a busking permit? Because there seems to be a lot of conditional things in here. For instance, number 14, buskers must demonstrate a reasonable degree of proficiency in their performance. How would you evaluate that? Is there a long conversation that's going to happen with buskers to determine?
So that's a great question, Councillor Sanford. One of the things that we did look at is what would auditions look like. However, lots of communities that do auditions to verify the skill level are actually moving away. One is labor intensive and it's a barrier to participate. So what we have done is added that to the town reserves the right to revoke your license if you don't actually have that skill set. So it's more in some ways complaint driven in assessment of, is there a skill set that are there. Additionally, if a busker is poor, I would assume that they wouldn't get the gratuities that people tend to share their way if they didn't have a certain skill set attached to them. And other communities have identified that generally weeds people out of actually performing publicly. That being said, we did have the right in there to, if we receive complaints or there's are unable to be consistent or maintain a certain standard, that we have the right to revoke their license as a result of that, as a better process than having auditions and indeed spending a lot of time verifying skill sets.
Yeah, it just seems that this is pretty qualitative. So if you have to evaluate someone's quality, either you talk to them or you determine some level of proficiency. But if it's going to be complaint driven, hopefully it's not complaining about a type of music that somebody doesn't like. No?
Fair enough. And I think that's an assessment that will have to be made at the time. Mm-hmm. This is our first stab at this process. There are different mechanisms that other communities have implemented. Some have shifted away and adjusted them. This is very similar to the process Banff has done for years and been quite successful in doing so. And it requires less staff time in order to bring it forward. or to initiate it. I would say that if we see that there are a lot of complaints, we might change the permitting conditions, but that doesn't have to come back to council. At that time, we can assess and make that change quite easily.
Sure. And is bylaw going to determine whether people are permitted when they're busking?
So bylaw can ask them for to show their busking permits. They would have to have that on them, either through e-version or a printed copy, so that bylaw can see that they are indeed a registered busker.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions at this time from Ms. McLeod? Seeing none, could you just put the revised wording of the first motion on the share screen again? Thanks.
All right, exited out of my screen. You should be able to see them. Do you see the motions? Okay.
Yes, I'm just comparing to. So we're amending bylaw 2021-01, correct?
Correct.
That bylaw doesn't have a section 5.13 in it. The bylaw that the amending bylaw will amend does.
Yes, so that's so section 5.13.2 is an inclusion, so that's to be added.
If I could just add, I believe the motion on the screen should say bylaw 2021-01. That's missing from the motion. That might help there.
Right, so we're amending bylaw 2021-01. Section.
The motion as worded on the screen is missing
Right.
those that,
Right.
yeah, so
Okay.
it needs to say that council amend bylaw 2021-1, section 3.
Right. Okay, well, let's leave that on the overhead. Councilor McCallum?
Yeah, so I agree with you, Mayor Barman, and Ms. Cottle, maybe you can help us. So there is no section 5 in 2021-01. There is a section 5 in 2015-02.
So it's not section 5, it's section 3BB in bylaw 2021-01. And that section refers to the language in 5.13.2. So if you look in bylaw 2021-1, section 3BB, and Ms. McLeod, I'm wondering if the motion could go up. I think that's leading to some confusion not having it on the screen.
I see. Insert section 5.13.2. I was looking for 5.13.
Yes. There's a number change that is confusing, but we're amending bylaw 2021, section 3BB, which refers to bylaw 2015, section 5.13.2. But Ms. McLeod has it on the screen now, so hopefully that clears it up a bit. We're looking at the most current bylaw, section 3BB, right, and that's where the amending wording is going.
Okay. Great. All right.
Okay, I understand. Thank you.
if there's no further questions this time for Ms. McLeod on her report, and I see none, I'll then move the council amend bylaw 2021-01, section 3BB to read, insert section 5.13.2 as follows. Buskers must be in possession of a business registry license and must comply with all conditions set out in the town's busking permit, and by deleting section 3MM. And we'll discuss that motion first. Is there any discussion on that motion? I'll just note that through the conversation, there was concern expressed by councillors around how this may play out. You know, one person's favorite busker is another person's worst nightmare. Particularly, it seems, when it comes to the pipes. But you know, clearly we're seeing more likelihood of busking in Canmore, and I think it's time that we put some stronger parameters around busking, and as has been noted, those parameters can be amended from time to time through administration initiative, or if necessary through a bylaw change. So with that, I'm happy to support this motion. Is there other discussion on the Councillor Sanford?
Thank you, Mayor Barman. I too will be happy to support this motion. I think that going to a permitting process versus a policy is probably more efficient. And the fees charged for the busking permit of $32.50 for a season is quite reasonable. I think the locations that are outlined, the buskers have lots of opportunity in a season to get out there and show their music. So I think this is a good way to address this issue, and thank you. I'll support it.
Just dawns on me, I should have put second reading on the table first and then the amending motion, but let's just have the records show that. So we're amending the bylaw at second reading. Is there further discussion on this proposed amendment? Seeing none, then I'll call the question on the top amendment as shown on the screen. Those in favor? Opposed? Motion's carried unanimously. And then I will go back to the main motion of giving second reading of the bylaw now as amended. Is there discussion on the motion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. Those in favor? Opposed? Motion's carried unanimously. And I'll move the council give third reading to Business Registry Bylaw Amendment 2021-01. Discussion on that motion. Seeing none, I'll call the question. Those in favor? Opposed? Motion's carried unanimously. And we'll now move on to item H1, the Business Resiliency Grant Program Budget Adjustments. Again, Ms. McLeod.
Hey, hello, Council again. You should be seeing the slideshow at this present time, or that's my...
Not quite yet.
No? Are you seeing it now?
Yeah, you bet.
Okay. So today I'm asking Council to approve a budget increase of $25,000 to the Capital Project 7169 Business Resiliency Grant Program to be funded by grants, and approve a scope amendment to include professional or mentorship services in addition to e-commerce support. Moving to kind of a history on this request. We had this project approved as part of the capital budget for 2021, and just historic data as part of the Economic Development Recovery Task Force. So in 2020, economic recovery work included the business-to-business voucher program, which focused on professional services. The budget allocated at the time was $50,000. That grant program was very quickly oversubscribed. We had the ability to provide $2,000 grants to allow businesses to access professional services like accounting, human resources, website or tech support to help them respond to COVID and build some resiliency in their capacity. Because the program was so successful, we've included a slightly different version in 2021 focused on e-commerce. So the building of e-commerce, enhancing e-commerce website, cybersecurity and those elements, again, to build resiliency in our business community. And this was funded out of economic development, the Economic Development Reserve. Since then, Community Future Centre West has offered to provide additional funding of $25,000 to support our recovery work, with the focus being on business-to-business program, the e-commerce program. They have allocated staff time in order to review grants and applications or provide business coaching. Should we not be sure that the applicant really knows where to focus their time and energy in that process. Community Futures has asked the town if they could apply some flexibility to the program should we not have the same response as we did in 2020 by building in the ability to redirect the funds to other areas. For example, a version 1, which focused more on professional services, or utilizing it to other recovery efforts. So for that reason, we are asking council to allow for change of scope and budget allocated to the capital project 7169 Business Resiliency Grant Program. And a scope enhancement adjusts the program to include professional services or mentorship program development should the new total budget of $75,000 for e-commerce not be fully subscribed. And I will say that the e-commerce grant is currently open for applicants. So we did, alternatively, council could say, could reduce the amount taken from the Economic Development Reserve and still have the budget at $50,000. However, our recommendation is to increase the budget and slight scope enhancements as outlined in the presentation. So that's it for presentation for me at this point in time.
Thank you. Certainly, we know the Resiliency Grant Program was well used last year. And I think it's safe to assume it's going to be needed for a number of businesses again this year. So have you been getting any feedback yet from the business sector regarding their current experience or their expected summer operations?
So currently we have the grant open. We, I think, have 10 applicants to date for various types of e-commerce related programming and supports. We expect that we will see more applications come through. And that was as of Thursday of last week. I can't see, I don't know what has come in over the weekend yet.
Could you, Councillor Sanford, I just had one other question along the same line. Ms. McCleck, could you refresh or speak a little bit about some of the what some of the businesses that received the grant that last year were able to do with those grant funds?
So some of the grant funding has gone to hiring an accountant to help them navigate all the federal and provincial grants that sometimes are quite complex, to make sure that they could do that. So applying for the wage subsidy is probably the most complex of those programs, which kind of superseded additional human resources support, specifically because we have a high number of temporary foreign workers in the Valley, and that required some different skill sets when laying off staff to deal with the COVID flux, as well as we had one company move to allow for remote work, which they didn't have prior to COVID. So the technical services to do that, as well as mental health support is something that we had a number of businesses apply for. So those are probably the top reasons people applied for the grant last year. And then through the second wave of closures, we saw the increased need for access to e-commerce. We had a number of businesses that have been so busy working in their stores. They still need the ability to reach customers if they can't come to the store. And so for that reason, the e-commerce focus for this year was identified through the business surveys as a critical area of support.
Great, thanks very much. Councillor Stanford.
Thank you, Mayor Borman. My question was, is if e-commerce can be used for curbside pickup coordination?
So they could, yeah. If they booking software, e-commerce enhancements, the marketing of the e-commerce site, although that's 25% of the grant. Cybersecurity related to having an e-commerce site, all those elements that might be needed. Yeah, and then this year, different processes that we had e-commerce web developers in the Valley kind of apply to the program so that we could provide applicants with a list of Canmore-based businesses that provided those services and skill sets so that they don't have to go searching everywhere, but that we had kind of a list of pre-screened businesses come through.
Great, thank you.
Are there other questions at this time for Ms. McLeod? Seeing none.
Thank you, Council.
Mayor Borman, I do have one question. I'm sorry.
Councillor McCallum.
Thank you. Ms. McLeod, could you please explain, remind me who Community Futures West is?
So Community Futures Center West, or Community Futures in general, is funded by Western Economic Diversification. They manage a number of type of programming, business counseling, financing. In this case, they manage the rural, I've been calling it the RUF Fund, which is essentially RFFF, which is a little bit of an alternative to the CEBA funding. So if you can't get the funding through the bank, they provided the same type of programming through Community Futures, generally dealing with more businesses that couldn't get the loan approved by under the bank's conditions.
Yes.
And it's because of that service and that funding that they got a commission, and that commission they're passing on to communities like Canmore to then utilize for their recovery work as well. So it's a bit of a trickle down.
Excellent. Had somebody asked me this question yesterday and I actually gave them the right answer. So I'm happy.
Awesome.
Thank you so much.
No problem.
One other question. At the top of page 2 of your report, you note that the Community Futures requested some flexibility in the program and suggested you would build in the ability to redirect the B2B version 1 focus should leftover funding from version 2 be available. Can you expand a little bit on that thought, please?
So under the current grant program, it's the focus is very specific, right, on e-commerce. Community Futures wants the money to be spent on recovery and resiliency work that we are doing. The current capital project would have it limited to that project. So thus the change of wording to say if we don't see the number of applicants that we did in 2020, if it's too specific, that we can redirect the funds to other recovery work, like the version 1 of the grant, or another program that has been requested is some type of mentorship program for the businesses to deal with the challenges that they are facing now.
Okay, great. And that redirection would still fit within the direction that was approved by council under project number 7169 there. wouldn't be anything outside of what's described in that project that was approved.
So that's where the motion changed, the recommended budget increase and change of scope.
So we'll increase the budget to 75,000 for that program, but there wouldn't be any significant changes to the direction of that funding as a result of the redirection of the B2B version 1 focus.
Minor change, so scope amendments to include professional or mentorship services in addition to the e-commerce support, which is outlined on page 59, I think is the project summary that council approved.
Right. Okay, great, thanks. Are there other questions from members of council? Being none, thanks for your presentation again. And at this time, I will move the council approve a budget increase of $25,000 to capital project 7169, Business Resiliency Grant Program, to be funded by grants, and approve a scope amendment to include professional or mentorship services in addition to e-commerce support. Discussion on that motion. Councillor McCallum.
Thank you, Mayor Barman. I would be happy to support this amendment. You know, I'm really pleased to see how successful and how the business community embraced this program last year, and I'm even more excited to see how they embrace it this year. As council will recall in the public, this is part of our economic recovery program that we initiated in 2020. And clearly it is so effective that we have partners chomping at the bit to be able to partner with us. So I'm really happy that this is, like I said, being well received, allowing our businesses to expand themselves more organically, as well as continue to support local businesses. Local businesses supporting local businesses. It's very, very organic, and I'm really pleased to support. So I'll be happy to approve the recommendation. Thank you.
And in adding to that, I'm happy to see the Community Futures Center West supporting the work we're doing in this way. I expect they're supporting other communities in similar efforts, but it's really good to see that that support in times like this. Further discussion on the motion. Seeing none, I'll call the question. Those in favor? Opposed? Motion's carried unanimously. And we'll now move on to item H2, the Community Recovery Grant. Ms. Brown. There you are.
There I thought I was there and I really wasn't. Right.
Happens to me all the time.
I'm just going to share my screen.
I'm hearing, so I'm going to come listen.
All right. Can you see this? Okay.
Just going to remind Ms. DeSoto her mic's on.
All right. So good morning, Mayor, members of council. I'm here today to talk to you about the 2021 Recovery Grant Program.
They stopped it like this,
Somebody want to text Ms. DeSoto? There we go. Thank you.
Somebody keeps muting me.
Oh.
Wrong, Lisa. There we go. So I'm here today to request that council suspend the current community grant program and redirect funding to a recovery grant program for 2021. The current community grant program will resume in 2022. The current community grant program is intended to provide up to 50% of the total expenses for one-time project-based initiatives and events. Eligible applicants must have a mandate in sport, recreation, parks, art, culture, social service, economic improvement, or the environment. Applicants need to demonstrate that their project or event is new and innovative and can be completed within a year and fits with the purpose of the granting stream that they are applying to. Canmore has 2 granting streams, events and initiatives. To fit with the purpose of the event grant, applicants need to demonstrate that they support a provincial, national, international event, or that their event is unique, one-time cultural event, or a one-time social experience, or an event that improves destination awareness or increases civic pride through celebration. Applicants can apply for up to $10,000 in event funding, and there are 2 application deadlines, one in the spring and one in the fall. To fit with the purpose of the initiative grants, applicants need to demonstrate that their project supports community organizations with launching a new initiative, promote increased community access to organization services, supports community awareness, or increases community connectedness. Applicants can apply for up to $5,000 in initiative funding, and there is 1 application deadline in the spring. Now, as Canmore begins to focus on pandemic recovery, there is opportunity to provide a different level of support to community organizations and events. So these organizations have the resources that they need to support Canmore residents with recovery. To keep our nonprofit sector strong, there's opportunity to provide operational funding as opposed to project-based funding, meaning that instead of providing one-time funding to a new or innovative project that has a clear beginning and end time or event, the town of Canmore will be investing in organizations that fit with the grant's purpose. So the purpose of the recovery grant program is to provide operational funding to organizations that host a community-centric event, program, and/or services, and that strengthen informal connections between local residents, that support provincial, national, and/or international event programs or services, and that creates opportunities for local participation, that build awareness of local businesses and services to encourage participation in our local businesses, that create a welcoming and social experience that strengthens connection between residents and visitors, and that support sustainable tourism initiatives that increase community pride and resilience. To summarize, the Recovery Grant Program will support organizations that help build a community's informal support networks and help them create a welcoming and vibrant Canmore. To provide organizations with the capacity to adapt to changing health directives, organizations will have 18 months as opposed to 12 months to allocate and use grant funding. All applicants can apply for up to $10,000 in operational funding. And similar to the current grant program, organizations must have a mandate in sport, recreation, art, culture, ethnoculture, social service, economic improvement, and/or environment. New to 2021 is funding for organizations that have an ethnocultural mandate. Organizations with an ethnocultural mandate have always been eligible, but a clear invite helps support more diverse applications. And there will only be 1 application deadline, May 31st, 2021, so that the selection committee can assess all applications collectively and provide funding to the most impactful organizations. So if council approves this motion, the next steps will be as follows. The grant will open mid-April. Applications must be submitted no later than May 31st at noon. The committee will meet to review and adjudicate all applications in early June, and the town will announce their funding decisions sometime around mid-June. Thank you for your time. Can I answer any questions?
Mm-hmm. Well, yes, you can. Thanks for asking. So the sustainable tourism initiatives that's referenced in the report, do we have terms that define what we mean by sustainable tourism initiatives?
So there's not a clear term of what we mean by sustainable tourism initiative, but economic development is on the selection committee. So we would be really using their expertise to understand, is this application aligned with what we would say a sustainable tourism initiative? We wanted to keep it open to invite a diverse applicants. If you really name it, sometimes then you end up closing that creativity down.
So thinking about a little bit, I've learned about sustainable events, that generally that refers to an event that reaches or comes close to net zero impact? Is that what you have in mind?
So all our community grants, we've asked that people have kind of a net zero impact. And there's no, we don't know for sure if that happens, but there are lots of resources within the town of Canmore to support net zero events.
Great, thank you. And did you, in your verbal presentation, I don't think it was in the written report, you mentioned applications that might be related to ethnic-centric programming?
So we always accepted organizations that have a mandate in ethnocultural, What we did this year is we just named it. And we did that so we can invite a more diverse application group. Research has shown that when you name that, then people see themselves as able to apply.
Sure. I mean, that is new, at least in the conversation. So I'm intrigued by that, and perhaps another opportunity we can learn a bit more about that or how it plays out. One other question I have is around the supporting sustainable tourism initiatives that increases community pride and resilience. And thinking about the request from the Rotary Club some time ago for additional funding for their planning purposes for the possibility of a Canada Day celebration, which frankly I think is still a long shot. But if there was an opportunity for some level of Canada Day celebration, this grant would presumably be available to the Rotary Club as a nonprofit to apply to.
That's right. As a nonprofit, they can apply to it. And what the committee will be looking at is that they have a plan to follow public health directives. And just to reiterate, because we lengthened the time that you can allocate the dollars, that still allow for plans to change. So if things change and you had planned something for this summer and you're able to delay it to next summer, then that will still work with the grant.
Great. Well, I think you've done some good work in addressing this transitional period we're in regards to grant funding. Are there other questions from members of council? Councillor Comfort.
Can you hear me? Oh, there we go.
Sure can.
Okay, I'll try to be less foolish this time. Sorry. So my question, Ms. Brown, is if a person were to have, or a group rather, were to have an initiative in the Truth and Reconciliation area, would that ethnocultural portion, is that what you're thinking of, or what that might qualify then?
Definitely, they would have a mandate in ethnoculture, so they would fit with being able to apply, the organizations that can apply. And then I think the other big piece is to fit with the purpose of the grant. And so if a group that is working towards truth and reconciliation is also looking at strengthening connections and is also looking at increasing pride and resilience, then and strengthening informal connections, then I think that they would be eligible and fit with the purpose of the grant as well.
So it seems like there's a lot of room there for that kind of activity.
That's right.
Okay, thank you.
And would this grant application have to come from a local nonprofit?
So we say Canmore-based nonprofits, and what we mean by that is supporting Canmore residents. So there are some nonprofits that have received money in the past that maybe are not, their physical office isn't located in Canmore, but they support residents, and we only fund the area of their application that supports Canmore residents. It is for Canmore residents. So you do need to be able to demonstrate that you do support Canmore residents in your application.
Okay. Do any examples come to mind? Not that it's critical, but.
A good example is we have in the past through the community grant initiatives, not through the relief fund, funded Bow Valley Immigration Partnership. So Bow Valley Immigration Partnership is based out of Banff, but we were very specific that the funding that we could support was for Canmore residents, and they were supporting Canmore residents who are new Canadians with getting the skills they need to be on boards within our community and with professional development.
Great. Yeah, that's a really good example. Thank you. Are there other questions this time for Ms. Brown? Seeing none, thanks very much for doing the work to bring this request to council. I think it's timely and I have a feeling it'll be easy to support for councillors. And with that, I will move the council suspend the community grant program for 2021 and redirect the funding to the 2021 recovery grant program as presented. And I'll speak in support of this motion. I know that the work that Ms. Brown and your team has been doing and continues to do is incredibly important for the health of our community. And I really appreciate all that they're doing and the creative approach that they take to doing their work. So as always, my hat's off to you and your team, Ms. Brown. And I will be happy to support this motion. Councillor Sanford.
Thank you, Mayor Barman. I too will be happy to support this motion. I think it's a good direction to be supporting operational funding versus project funding right now. And I like the fact that there's an 18-month timeline on this because we're still very disrupted by COVID impacts. And I think it's really good that you have the foresight to see that these projects could move forward these operational funding could be used at a later date. And I appreciate that you've directed it in that direction. So thank you.
Further, yes, Councillor Comfort.
Well, I just want to echo my colleagues' comments and say that the other part that I admire, besides your creativity in that department, is your ability to kind of pivot and when the situation changes and assess the changes and come up with something that meets the needs of the people. So kudos to you and your staff.
Further discussion on the motion from members of council. Councillor McCallum.
Thank you, Mayor Barman. Super happy to support this. Really appreciative of Ms. Brown's creativity, that department, and really, realizing that our community is going to really need some morale boosting. And I believe that these nonprofits have the ability to do that over the course of our recovery. So thank you very much.
If there's no further discussion, I'll call the question. Those in favor? Opposed? Motion's carried unanimously. We're moving along a little more briskly than we had thought we might. I think we could cover the next item, H3, before scheduling a break, but I'll look to council. Would you rather call a short? Is that a yes, Councillor McCallum? Call a short break? That's a yes. Okay, then we'll call a short break now then and resume the meeting in.
No, Your Worship, I was agreeing with you.
Okay,
great. That one in. Sorry, yeah. Your Worship.
Good. Well, great. That's, I think, makes more sense. So we will move ahead and consider item H3, the Safe Park, a modified COVID-19 Safe Park pilot. Again, Ms. Brown.
All right. Well, thank you for letting me join your meeting once again. So I'm here today to talk about the 2021 Safe Park pilot. And the review and then introduce recommendations for 2021 Safe Park pilot for your approval and review, or review and approval. So in today's presentation, I will provide Council with a brief overview of the background and history. I'll discuss the reasons for a Safe Park program. I'll talk about the 2020 Safe Park pilot and present to Council the 2021 Safe Park pilot and recommendations. I am presenting a lot of information today. Please don't hesitate to ask any questions throughout the presentation if clarification is needed. And I may not be able to see your hand, so please don't hesitate to interrupt me. Oh, and you probably cannot see my screen.
We probably can't.
My apologies for that.
That's okay. Now we can.
All right. Okay. So in 2018, we noticed that the population of individuals residing in their vehicle increased significantly and was continuing to increase, most notably in the gravel lot beside Elevation Place and behind Save on Foods, which was dubbed Canmore. In 2018, the town began to closely monitor the lot. A municipal working group was created to review available demographics and resources and to review information from other communities to understand legislation and legal impacts and to hear community feedback. By 2019, after evaluating the available information, administration recognized that more detail was needed. So in 2019, Council approved a seasonal outreach worker to collect demographic information and research potential programs. The seasonal outreach worker was also tasked with connecting individuals in Canmore with community resources. Also in 2019, Council approved a parking ban in Canmore between 7 a.m. and 9 a.m. daily. The parking ban was a temporary restriction aimed at limiting growth as the area was on travel blocks and at maintaining our daytime municipal parking spaces, as well as meeting provincial legislation, which I won't go into detail now, but please feel free to ask me any questions about if you do have any. All while at the same time still maintaining a place for individuals who need the space to rest at night. In 2020, based on the outreach workers' research, Council approved the 2020 Safe Park pilot in February. So we don't have time today to go into the research and all the details from the 2019 research, but it is a part of public record and I'm happy to direct anyone to that research if interested. But there were some key components that I wanted to highlight today. So based on business surveys, we found that 38 individuals were identified as working in Canmore and residing in their vehicles. And we also found that this represented approximately 5% of our seasonal workforce. Based on some interviews, we realized that the median time of individuals who resided in their vehicles was 75 days. And the most common reason for individuals reported residing in their vehicles included travel, saving money, and being unable to afford rent. So as I mentioned earlier, the outreach worker was also tasked with finding a program that can meet our community's vision and fit with our community needs as a whole. So Canmore's municipal vision is that we are a resilient and vibrant community, socially, economically, environmentally, and that our strength is in our resourceful and engaged citizens who thrive together on the strength of the community's heritage, long-term commitment to diversity of its people, and the health of our mountain landscape. To meet this vision, Council has a goal of livability, which is that we are an inclusive and accessible community for people of diverse social and economic backgrounds. We know that Canmore has the highest housing prices in Alberta. We know that we have the highest living wage in Alberta at $30.97 per hour. And according to the Job Resource Centre, we have a starting wage of just under $19 per hour. With the goal of livability in mind, and based on the 2019 research, the Safe Park program was proposed in 2020. The reason the Safe Park pilot was proposed was because it responds to the reality of Canmore. The reality is that there are individuals who sleep in their vehicles in Canmore, and some of these individuals choose to reside in their vehicles and some need to. A significant number of individuals who reside in their vehicle are part of our seasonal workforce, which the community relies on. Affordability is a key reason for individuals to reside in their vehicles. There are limited affordable seasonal housing options in Canmore, and there are no safe or legal places for individuals to park overnight if they do reside in their vehicles. In essence, the Safe Park program is designed to help our seasonal workforce and support our community. There are alternative programs, and we will be working with some other resort-based communities to hear and understand opportunities and challenges with their programs. And what I've heard to date is that individuals or communities that have tried these alternative programs are now looking to maybe try something like a Safe Park program. So one alternative is a low-cost campground or a municipal subsidized campground. And this allows for a clean separation between parking and camping. The challenge is that needs land is costly to maintain and monitor. And if individuals are using the campsite as housing, municipalities may need to follow an eviction process if the campsite is no longer a good fit. Another alternative is to have designated lots where van life is allowed. And this funnels van life into one area And so without a designated areas, individuals who reside in their vehicle will often move throughout a community to avoid warnings and tickets. The challenge is that the population can quickly grow beyond the capacity of the designated area, and the area tends to serve visitors, seasonal workers, and individuals who have affordability challenges, all who have very different needs. In addition, the area could be considered housing as well, and the municipality may also need to follow an eviction process if the area is no longer a good fit for that individual. Another alternative is to ban overnight sleeping in vehicles completely. And this has been popular in California. And the benefit is that it is clear, but the challenge is that it does not recognize the complexity of many people's situation. And without an affordable alternative, it can put individuals in a difficult position. Also, communities that have banned overnight sleeping in their vehicles have found that the solution is either ineffective or the population moves around throughout the community trying to avoid fines and tickets, but often need to live in their vehicle with no other choice. So the Safe Park program will have opportunities and will have challenges as well. And evaluation is a key part of the pilot. So the 2020 Safe Park pilot was approved in February 2020. The goal of the 2020 pilot was to provide a safe, affordable, regulated overnight parking option for individuals who are employed in Canmore and who reside in their vehicle. The program was seasonal and was created to support our seasonal workforce. It is not a camping program and not a program to support individuals who struggle with homelessness. As part of the 2020 program, 50 parking stalls were approved. The program was to be located in scattered sites across the municipality. Council approved 5 municipal sites that were selected based on proximity to washroom and waste facility, lot capacity, and distance from residential properties. Council also approved a fee of $10 per night, and this amount was based on the research from 2019. The Safe Park pilot was canceled in March 2020 when the World Health Organization declared a pandemic. The 2021 pilot. We anticipate that we will have a busy community this summer and that we will need a seasonal workforce. We also anticipate that COVID-19 will remain with us throughout the summer. Based on observations from 2020, we anticipate that the demand for Safe Park will be lower. So this pilot will only include 20 program spaces. The 2021 pilot has the same goal as the 2020 pilot. It provides seasonal, safe, affordable, and regulated parking program to employed individuals who reside in their vehicle. The program will be piloted between June 15th and September 15th with a fee of $10 per night. And because of COVID-19, the program will follow public health recommendations. Also similar to our 2020 plan, we will contract a security company to ensure that the space is safe for participants, only used by participants, and that the area is monitored. Our local security companies have a strong working relationship with the RCMP and will contact the RCMP if ever needed. To be eligible for the program, individuals will need to be employed in the Bow Valley, working at least 20 hours per week. We'll need a valid license, registration, and insurance. We'll need an operational vehicle that fits in a standard parking stall and must agree to the program responsibility agreement. We worked with public health to create a program that adheres to public health directives and keep participants safe. We will require all participants to take personal responsibility for knowing and adhering to public health directives. Participants will be assigned one lot for the entire program to limit contacts. Each lot will have access to a porta potty that will be professionally cleaned daily and a bare bin. Vehicles will be spaced to ensure that there is at least 6 feet between vehicle doors. The program will include a self-isolation procedure in the event that the participant may be required to self-isolate. And all participants will be required to wear a mask when in program area, which is the parking area of the program. Program parking stalls will be located on both private and municipal lots. Administration is requesting that council approve a lot criteria for the 2021 pilot, which means that the program will only be hosted on municipal lots that meet the following criteria. So the lot needs to be centrally located, and that really is to support us with just some logistics. The lot needs to be flat, can accommodate 10 consecutive stalls to allow for space for physical distancing, has a relatively low traffic in the evening and morning, and relatively low meaning that not non-existent. The space has to have a natural perimeter, and so that will help with kind of clearly defining this is where the parking program is. And we'll work with Bylaw and RCMP to make sure that we get that part right. Is not in a residential neighborhood, does not interfere with other municipal projects. And then lastly, if the space is in a downtown core, we will make sure that we engage the Downtown Business Improvement Association. To be part of the program, we will require that all participants who enter into the program sign and agree to a responsibility agreement. The town will be responsible for providing a safe and respectful space, and participants will be responsible for knowing and understanding health directives, respecting municipal bylaw, keeping the program space clean and all belongings in their vehicles, maintaining a license, insurance, and registration, paying their program fees, and notifying the town if they are required to self-isolate. Throughout the program, we will collect data as it relates to 3 program outcomes. Outcome 1, the program meets community need. Outcome 2, employed individuals living in their vehicle felt part of the community, safe, and able to maintain employment throughout the pilot. And outcome 3, the number of overnight parking violations issued are low. Administration will report data back to council sometime in the fall. Thank you for your time. Can I answer any of your questions?
Thank you very much. I guess just your last comment sparked a question that I didn't have as we sat down for this meeting, but given the relatively small number of stalls that are being proposed, what will we do if there's 3 times the demand? People will then continue to be parking, in locations that are not permitted, and we'll have the same sort of community concerns as we did 2 summers ago. So
that's a good question. We don't anticipate that there is going to be more than 20, but if there is, we would do what we typically do. What we do now is we present people with all the different options that they have and help them navigate those options for housing, and then we assess the gaps. If we find that the gap is significant, then we amend a program, or we come to council with a new program. So at that point, we might entertain the idea of amending the program. We have the lot criteria that we could use, but our first step will be to just show people the resources that are available and help them navigate those resources.
right. So there's that opportunity to increase the number of assigned stalls, should that be necessary. Also in keeping with the approved criteria. So the council's not approving locations. That's I understand that intent, but we are through this motion approving the criteria that's used to select locations.
That's right.
And in the lot criteria breakdown that you included as attachment number 2, that only assesses it only evaluates town-owned locations. and not privately owned, although there's at least, well, there's 2 private parking lots that'll be used. Was there other private lots that were evaluated under the same criteria?
So right now we'll evaluate private lots on a case by case, and they will still need to fit the lot criteria. A little bit more, there's some differences, like we need to make sure that they are aware of their responsibility as well, that they can allow us to come onto their property to monitor and remove vehicles. But we will also be following our own lot criteria. So it will need to be flat. We'll be looking for natural barriers. We'll be looking to make sure that there's not a lot of congestion. So right now we do have the 2, and they were the 2 that were interested in 2020. If we need to expand, we would also be looking at partnering out to other private organizations who commented that they were interested.
And I appreciate that those 2 private sector operations are involved in this program. I think that's great. And it's outside of our area of involvement, I suppose. If there's more unapproved overnight parking on the Save-On lot, that's their private lot. But is the intent then for Bylaw to have the approval or permission from Save-On to go into their parking lot now and issue warnings or fines to anyone that's parking overnight in the Save-On lot that aren't in the approved program?
That is the intent. I'm going to ask that Mr. Burt answer that question in more depth and detail.
Great, thanks very much. Welcome, Mr. Burt.
Welcome. Thank you. That's something that we still need to work out with the manager of Save-On. We were in regular and frequent communication with them throughout last year. And again, as it is private property, they can make that decision, but that would be something that we would have sorted out prior to the start of the program this year.
Right, so the 2 options, I guess, are either it continues as it has in the past, where Bylaw doesn't have the ability to enforce on private land, or Save-On authorizes Bylaw to enforce on their lands.
That is correct, yes.
Right, thank you. I have more questions, but I'll open the floor. Councillor Sanford.
Thank you, Mayor Barman. Ms. Brown, I'm wondering, I'm reading the program opens on June 15th, and then the program registration closes on July 2nd, correct?
That's right.
So the intake period is just essentially 2 weeks at the end of June?
No, my apologies. We will be opening up for registration as of May 1st. So as of May 1st, and that might not be in the documents, so my apologies for that, miss.
Oh, sorry, no, it is in the register. Yeah, it is in here, but the program opens on June 15th. So you're taking people into the program on June 15th, but the program registration closes on July 2nd?
That's right.
So what happens if you don't have people apply?
Well, then we'll assume that it isn't as much of a need. We will be advertising. We'll be working with our community partners, Job Resource Center, and we'll make sure that our website is clear. If people don't apply, then that teaches us something. Maybe that this isn't the right program.
Okay, did you mention that you have some people from 2020 who are already interested?
We do have some people. We have an active email that we monitor right now, and there are some people who contacted us and said that they are interested.
Okay, so there is some interest being expressed already, and when the intake opens, you'll get a better idea of the applicants and their admissibility into the program then?
That's right. And we did discuss with the supervisor of bylaw services and our CMP staff sergeant, Andronic, sorry about that. And they both said that they felt that you see this huge flux in June and very early July, but you don't really see an influx of people who are seasonal workforce throughout the summer.
Okay. And these people are required to they can only use this space from 8 p.m. to 8 a.m. So they're required to move every day.
They are required to move every day. So it isn't a camping program, it's a safe place to park.
Right.
So we will provide resources. For instance, Travel Alberta has a place for gray water, as well as flushable toilets. So we'll make sure that people are aware of those resources within our community.
So are they expected to take their van to their workplace every day then?
It has to, their van to be a part of the program needs to fit within a standard parking stall. So we're assuming that if you are going to work, then you will be parking close to your work.
Okay, thank you.
Ms. Brown, in the attachment 3, you detail safe park participant responsibilities, one of which is only 2 people per vehicle. And is that intended to be like always the same 2 people? The 2 people can't change from day to day or week to week?
It's intended to be the same 2 people, so both will need to sign the program responsibility agreement.
Right.
But I mean, changes happen and we'll monitor those on a case-by-case basis.
And both those participants would have to show proof of employment.
Both participants will have to show proof of employment. However, the world is very different right now. So if somebody does lose their employment because of COVID or some other reason, we will work with them on a case-by-case basis.
Okay, great, thank you. Councillor Seeley, you had your hand up.
Thank you, Mayor Bowman. Ms. Brown, in attachment 1, Safe Park Health Directives, just wondering about point 2. Once registration closes, no new participants will be accepted into the program. Just wondering if that might be too closed and the rationale behind that.
So the rationale behind that is that we didn't want a lot of movements and lots. So if we did have to reassess and modify the program later on, we would be looking to do it in a new area so that we're not having people coming and going from a specific area, just to limit the contact. So if somebody in, say, lot 1 leaves, we won't be filling that. So we're not continually introducing new people into that program area.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Comfort, you had your hand up.
Yes, I just wondered, are you liaising with employers at all?
We work with the Job Resource Center. So we do liaise with the Job Resource Center and we do liaise with economic development, but not personally with employers, besides the 2 private companies, private organizations.
Right. Thank you.
Councillor Mera.
Thank you. This is just a question I'm asking, considering driving around and seeing some vehicles that would not fit in a regular standing parking stall. So we'll be referring those people to the alternative spots like the campground. I'm thinking of trailers that cannot be detached in those spots, correct? And left for overnight.
Yes, so you cannot leave a trailer, that's right, in a spot and leave it overnight. So those bigger camper vans would probably still work, but yes, we were not thinking a car and an attached trailer. Then we would be referring to our municipal camping ground.
Thank you. I have one other question, if I may, Mayor Borman.
Go ahead.
When it comes to insurance, ensuring that the vehicle itself, there's different types of insurance. So ensuring that they also have public liability insurance other than just general insurance.
We were going to ensure that they have general insurance, and we could change that and modify it, but our town insurance will cover the program area as well. So there is some insurance overlap. We need each individual in the program to have their own personal insurance. We weren't going to state how much insurance.
Thank you.
I just want to note that Councillor McCallum had to step away from the meeting for a moment, but she'll be back pretty quickly. And I do have another line of thought to ask about. Curious if there's been any recent discussions with the Alberta government or the lessee regarding the lease for the Wapiti site. What's the current conversation with on that site, both with the government and with the lessee?
Unfortunately, I'm unable to speak to that. It would be with Mr. Como, and I'm happy to ask him that question and report back to council.
I see Mr. Como's name there. I don't know if he's listening, but if there's anything, if he is and has anything to add to the conversation, it's not pertinent to today's decision. I'm just curious. Mr. Como?
Yes, good morning, Mayor Borman, Council. Sorry, I am here, and I'm in and out of listening to this meeting, but if you would just
I'm just
ask that question.
If there's been any additional discussion this past year or 6 months or so with either the provincial government or the lessee in regards to future expectations of the lease Wapiti campground?
No, I have no update. There's been no correspondence with the province of any changes. So we believe we're good for at least another 3 years, or 3 seasons of being able to operate a municipal campground.
And those 3 seasons that we anticipate, are they covered under the current lease, or will we be, I mean, the lease with the operator, is that going to be extended, or is that already detailed in the current lease?
We signed a new one and it's covered in there. So we do not need to make any changes.
Great. Thank you very much, Mr. Cole. And in the preparation for this year's Safe Park program, Ms. Brown, then the Wapiti management team hasn't been at all involved in the discussions regarding this year's Safe Park program.
Not for 2021, no.
Okay. Thank you. Are there other questions at this time for Ms. Brown or others regarding the Safe Park pilot program? I see none, so thanks very much for putting this report together, and again for the amount of work that goes into developing these programs. And with that, I will move the council approve the 2021 Safe Park pilot as presented for the 2021 season, beginning on June 15th, 2021, and concluding on September the 15th, 2021. Discussion on that motion. I'll speak in support of the motion. Certainly, we've experienced some challenges, as have many other communities similar to Canmore over the last several summers with the impact or the experience of a lot of people wanting to come to Canmore to work and to work for the summer and looking for reasonable and inexpensive accommodations. So this program has evolved from over the last couple of years, and it may prove to work really well, and other similar municipalities may start looking to what we're doing, or we may find that we haven't quite nailed it and there's some tweaking or changes that would be beneficial. But I'm very supportive of moving forward in a positive way to try and address this situation. Councillor McCallum, you had your hand up.
Thank you, Mayor Barman, and thank you, Edwin, for bringing this forward. I too will be supporting the COVID-19 Safe Park pilot. I believe that you articulated it well. We have a great need in our community, and I'm hoping that this will work to meet that need. What's exacerbating this need, of course, is the fact that we're in the middle of a global pandemic, and that fact doesn't necessarily adhere itself well to shared living is like it used to. I really appreciate the creativity and thought that was put into this pilot that's being proposed. I believe that there will be some tweaks along the way as well as at the end of the pilot. But I think that this is a really great starting point We are a community that speaks to finding places for everyone, Canmore for everyone. And I believe that this program has the ability to reach out to those that are looking to live safely in our community while working. So I appreciate this being brought forward. Thank you.
Councillor Sanford.
Thank you, Mayor Barman. I too will support this pilot. I know that it has evolved over the last couple of years, and of course we've had to respond to the pandemic in creative ways. It'll be interesting to see how many people actually register for the program. And, you know, I think the program has been conditioned with a number of regulatory requirements. There are a lot of rules involved in this. And I think those rules will protect both the participants and the community. So I'm hoping that there is some uptake of people that are willing to go through this program and demonstrate that there is a need and that the program will meet that need, and that the funding that's being provided here will also be offset by people who are using the program for employment purposes, but also reinvesting in the program through the daily requirement for them to pay. So I really appreciate administration coming up with all these options, and I will support it.
Further discussion on the motion? I see none. I'll call the question. Those in favor? Opposed? Motion's carried unanimously. And at this time, I'll call a 14-minute break, and we'll adjourn at 11:10 and complete the agenda. It appears as though we're live again. Am I right?
We never were not live, Mayor
Okay.
Borman.
We
Yep.
just
So just
session.
2 more minutes.
Okay. Just the screen changes, so looks like we're not live.
And if you're all back, you can get started.
That's what I was thinking, so we will call the meeting back to order. We just have one more item to discuss in public, and then we'll be going in camera. And there won't be any decisions made after going in camera, so if anybody's actually still watching, we're just about done with the public portion of the meeting. And with that, I will ask Ms. Hyde to share a screen and speak to us about item H4, the council representative for Bow Valley Wildsmart.
Thank you, Mayor Borman. I wonder though, if Councillor Comfort might like to speak to this item instead of me?
Absolutely, Councillor Comfort.
Can do. Councillor Seeley very kindly took my place on Bow Valley Wildsmart while I was off on medical leave. And I would like to return to that. They don't meet very often, but the meetings are very informative and it's a very important part of our wildlife strategy in the valley, and gives us a chance to get the latest news and really understand what's happening with those initiatives. So I would like to be a part of that again. Councillor Seeley has agreed to let me go back, but it requires a council motion to do that. So I would invite all of you to support me in this. That's it.
Did you and Councillor Seeley get into a tussle at all? Was there any fisticuffs?
Oh, a quick arm wrestle and I put him down and that was it. So.
Okay.
Yeah, pretty quick.
Yeah, I think this is straightforward. I don't think there's any questions from members of council. Thanks for joining us, Ms. Hyde. This time I'll move the council appoint Councillor Esme Comfort to Bow Valley Wildsmart until the October 2021 annual organizational meeting and rescind the appointment of Councillor Rob Seeley. Discussion on that motion. Seeing none, I'll call the question. Those in favor? Opposed? Okay, you're back on the job, Councillor Comfort.
Thanks,
And-
everyone.
Pardon me?
I just said thanks, everyone. That's all.
Yeah, you bet. This time I'll move the council go in camera to prevent disclosure of information that could reasonably be expected to harm the economic interest of a public body in accordance with section 25(1)(c)(3) of the Freedom of Information and Protection of Privacy Act. And so, yep, I'll move, we go in camera. Those in favor? Opposed? We're in camera shortly.